This is TWiT.
I am so glad to have Jacob Ward on the show with us. He did a TWiT a couple of weeks ago, and then I bought his book, and I went, wait a minute, we got to get Jacob back. Jake's been a correspondent for PBS and CNN, and you've probably seen him there, or Al Jazeera, NBC News. He's the host of a new podcast, The Rip Current with Jacob Ward, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And, of course, there's a newsletter at theripcurrent.com. Hello, Jacob. Great to have you.
Hello, Leo. Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
The book, The Loop, was your COVID project, I think.
It was.
Yeah. And, you know, I picked it up and I was enthralled. I can't put it down now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you did a good job of combining a lot of research into how we think and making it topical in this, you know, world of surveillance capitalism, if you will. What is The Loop?
Yeah. So, geez, I'm so flattered to be asked about this. So basically, Leo, the concept was I had just done basically 4 years of a big documentary series for PBS called Hacking Your Mind. That was all about how behavioral scientists have shown that we are captive to very ancient circuitry that governs most of the decisions we make in our day-to-day lives, and we don't even know about it. And then in my day job as a tech correspondent, I was talking to all these companies that were trying to, you know, break through with these nascent, generative AI systems and neural networks and the rest of it to sort of govern human behavior as much as possible, corral human behavior as much as possible. And as I saw these two things coming together, I thought, oh, this is bad. There's a scary thing coming in which I worried that companies were going to basically foist AI on us and wind up amplifying kind of the worst parts of being human, our most instinctive tribal bias stuff.
Stop,
I know, right?
It, Paris. Don't egg him on.
Well, Paris, I mean, this is the thing is like, I thought I was like 10 years early on this subject. It came out about 9 months before ChatGPT did.
Oh my God.
So basically like, I've been surfing a lot has been what's been happening lately. Cause I just, you know, as I watch my thesis come to life over and over and over again, I just kind of, I've been stepping back, going to the beach as much as I can.
Well, yeah, in fact, that's the name of your podcast, The Rip Current, although be careful on the beach because
that's the thing, dangerous place.
As you point out, it's
that's right.
not. You say the Rip Current covers the big hidden forces just beneath the surface that threaten to pull us all out to sea. You know, it's. I've read as you have, and probably most of our audience has, you know, Thinking Big and Fast and Slow, you know, the Kahneman book and the behavioral economics books, and we've listened to the podcast. So I think we're more and more aware of how much our unconscious mind rules our choices, you know. Even Jonathan Haidt, the late, great Jonathan Haidt, in his book, The Unreasoning Mind, said, you know, our reason is just a little driver riding an elephant of emotion. And that we think most of what we do with our reasoning is justify the emotional decisions we made. But what's scary is the idea that big tech would then weaponize that against us.
Well, and the thing is, you know, I think whenever you talk to people in that world, you know, you start to realize that it's not a grand conspiracy. It's not as if these people, I mean, I think it turns out to be, you know, the CEOs of a lot of these companies do turn out to be on the same text thread. But I don't think that they are necessarily like executing some grand multi-year plan. It's just that they keep throwing spaghetti at the wall and certain spaghetti strands stick. And one of the stickiest is, you know, when you amplify our most instinctive unconscious decision-making, you wind up, you know, that's the part of our brain that's easiest to sell stuff to and the easiest to create predictive behavior in. It also, I was just literally on a walk right before you and I joined up, you know, got on here. I was literally on a walk with a guy whose whole work is around trying to fight loneliness in this world. And his whole thesis is, you know, every time you through technology, you know, get to do, you know, every time an aspect of your life is made simpler through technology, you tend to be made a little bit lonelier, right? There are these qualities to being human that are messy and, you know, full of friction and unpredictable, that are really the best parts of being who we are. But technology right now is not about amplifying those things. It's about trying to get us to bet on football on our phones.
Right. They're not trying to make us lonely, but that's the upshot.
But that's the upshot. Exactly. It's not a conspiracy. It's just that the incentive structure of the moment winds up doing this. And here's the other part.
Just like media.
Right? Well, that's right. That's right. I mean, it all feels that way.
At least when I'm watching TV, I'm sitting next to my wife. When I'm wearing a Vision Pro headset, I'm all alone.
Yeah. And
when I'm watching, when I'm looking at Twitter and doom scrolling, it's just me there.
No, that's right. And the thing that's bothering me the most right now, because I know that, our topic here today is, intelligent machines, we're thinking about AI specifically. So for me, the thing that I am really thinking about right now is how much, so one thing that happened a lot in researching the book was talking to experts in how humans behave, and then meeting these companies that think they understand how humans should behave or would behave if they made good decisions, and are trying to pre-encode those values into these AI systems they're building, and then they would bump into these big problems in doing that. So if one example is, I was talking to people at one of the big foundational model companies, and they said that inside their company, they had this thought experiment that they would get into, this fight that they would get into with one another all the time, and they called it the Heroine Problem. I talk about it in the book. The Heroine Problem is, let's say you're an AI company, you're trying to make a perfect AI personal assistant that's great at delivering to you the perfect schedule, and that knows who you're going to see, and adjusts to your sleep schedule and just makes your life perfect. But you're addicted to heroin. What is that system supposed to do? Is it supposed to get you off of heroin, right? Try to get you into rehab and continuously work against your addiction? Or is it supposed to make your addiction easier to live with, facilitate it? Does it book the appointment with your dealer? Does it work around when it knows you're going to be junk sick? You know what I mean? Like we don't know. No two people have the same values. And right now, you've got all these companies trying to talk about their values. Anthropic, right, has a whole constitutional AI idea that you're going to pull in all of these universal human values, but you can't find two political scientists that agree on values. And then at the same time, you've got the thing that's been happening this month that's been blowing my mind is you've got the newest version of Elon Musk's model, Grok 3, now has an unhinged mode where all the guardrails come off, and it'll do any gross thing you ask it to do. You ask it to write a blackmail letter, it'll do it. You ask it to impersonate a child for icky reasons, it'll do it. You know what I mean? So we're in this weird world where we're coming face to face with our values and how little we understand about our values, at the same time that we are literally trying to encode those values into these systems, because these companies expect that these systems are going to run every aspect of our lives.
It's like asking Philip Morris about nicotine. Oh, it's not addictive, but they're sure as hell not taking it out of the cigarettes. Jeff, you were the one who told me that Hannah Arendt said that loneliness is what leads to dictatorships, to authoritarianism.
Yes, you become alienated from your community and from society and become more vulnerable. But Jake, I'm as you're talking, I'm wondering in a way if the unhinged, this is for argument's sake, if the unhinged version is the better version insofar as it's truer to what it is.
It's accurate.
And I constantly argue that the thought that we can have guardrails that will make everything safe is a fool's errand, because you can't anticipate everything bad that might be done.
All of the research
what it really is maybe better.
You can easily poison these prompts and get the AI to tell the truth. And I'm with you, Jeff. I've always said, AI safety is a myth. First of all, you can't get it. Second, why? It's like saying, well, don't show anything bad on the internet in your search results. That's the internet. That's what's there. That's us.
I hear that argument, and I think there's a handful of things there are a handful of reactions I have to it. So first is, and Paris, I want to hear your thoughts on this too, because I know you've thought about this too. So for me, I think there's an accelerationist idea that's out there right now that if we just open up, the world, the market will figure it out and will sort of burn through to the truth of society and blah, blah, blah. There's this whole kind of idea right now that we should be accelerating the development of this stuff because clearly it's going to lead somewhere, productive if we just kind of let it go. But I think that human history has shown us that that is not how it works. That when you let the market just roll, all kinds of bad things come out of it, right? I just came out of a podcast interview on the Rip Current with a leading national expert in addiction, right? And he was talking about how in the last, addiction is an invention of the market. It's only been around for about 200 years because the market takes what, tobacco, which used to be a raw thing, back when tobacco was first being smoked, a handful of people would die every year of it because nobody liked smoking it because it was horrible to take into your lungs. It was a terrible, rough plant. Then they got really good at toasting it. And
it's toasted.
It's toasted, right? And putting the filter on the front and all of that stuff that made it suddenly very easy to absorb into your lungs. And suddenly we're awash now in tens of thousands of cigarette deaths a year, right? Letting the market do what it wants to do with these products doesn't necessarily lead to a better plan. There's a reason that we have literal guardrails on the highway and lane dividers and seat belts and airbags. These are not because we did away with the friction that we, of how to control these sorts of technologies. It's because we had to pull back. And to me, there's an illusion right now, because this is the other part of it, right, is that the AI people who make those, the leaders of those companies promise in this very evangelical kind of faith-based way, a great thing is coming. AGI is coming and it's going to improve the world endlessly, and we're going to discover new science and breakthrough stuff, and you'll live a life of leisure. And they say that all of this, letting people do horrible stuff with AI is going to be worth it in order to get to that future.
Oh, yeah, that I don't agree with. That I don't agree with.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it just feels, I don't understand the logic of saying we shouldn't try our best to reflect some basic human decency in the systems that
if we can know if that's possible, though. If we fool ourselves into thinking that we can get rid of the stuff, the bad stuff, then we have false comfort.
I mean, I don't think it has to be a binary. I think that we can, existing in a modern, technologically advanced society that we are currently, we can come at new and transformative technologies with the understanding that they contain the potentiality to cause great harm or have great good come from them. And that the great goods that are going to come out of them will only exist in a world in which we work actively to make that happen. And given the examples of almost every technology we've seen in the past, it seems more likely that great harms are going to come if we're not incredibly on top of it from a regulatory perspective and from a population-wide morals or social norms perspective. If we're not approaching this on all angles of, hey, we've got to take responsibility to make sure whatever this new product or technology we're doing is good and is being created in a way that brings about more light than it does darkness. I don't think that's, maybe it's a naive thing to expect of capitalist enterprises, but I think that if AI contains even some of the potential that its biggest proponents are espousing, it's well worth the effort.
Did you just say that?
That sounded almost accelerational.
I've been trying to say that for months. That is the argument, right? Let's not hold it back until we know what it can do.
Well, no. To be clear, my argument is not that we shouldn't hold it back. It's that we should do everything in our power to make sure that this technology is being developed responsibly and has guardrails on it. Because if these companies are not going to stop creating this and it's going to have some fantastic sort of output, or even some portion of the fantastic output, then you guys can slow down a little bit and make sure that and deal with regulators being up in your business.
What if it's not possible?
If it's not possible, then I think that it's even more pertinent, not ban it, but I think it's even more pertinent that we have common sense regulations, that we make it, a social norm that companies employ teams of, the term AI safety has become sort of a pejorative among you two, Leo and Jeff, but employ people actually dedicated to the concept of AI safety in the sense of, let's make sure this being designed in a way that we think of the potential ramifications.
I'm not against AI safety.
No, I'm all
I
for
agree with
safety.
you. I'm not against AI safety. I think the problem is how humans use it. it. I mean, for instance, we now know Clearview AI was created specifically with the purpose of making its facial recognition make it easier to put brown people in jail. That, once you know that, that's the people that's the problem, not the AI that's the problem. That's the content it's trained on is the problem. It's the way it's used is the problem.
Well, and this is why I would say that this is why you shouldn't fall into, like, so much of the rhetoric around this kind of thing plays into the ambitions and motivations of the people running the companies that are making these things. Like I keep hearing, for instance, I remember years ago I was interviewing Palmer Luckey, who created Anduril, right? Big military contractor. He invented, he was the creator of Oculus, and then he went on to do a bunch of military contracting he still runs Anduril, which makes all these, drones and facial recognition systems and weaponized systems for the military. And I asked him, you have created technologies that are going to necessitate new morals in the world, morals that we don't have right now. Yeah. So is it up to you to invent the morals along with the technology that you have built? And he said the same thing that everybody in tech has always said to me, which is, that's not my job. Yeah. My job is to build the thing, and then democracy will figure it out. And I just think more and more we're seeing that the really smart reformers around this stuff, the people who are really starting to think about this in a more sophisticated way, I would argue more adult way, are saying, no, actually, we need to start asking, like, what is the end game here? And why am I being tasked with building this thing? I mean, at a big tech company these days, you get fired for asking, if you're in one of the really big ones, if you ask too much about the big plan, you get fired. You're not allowed to ask. You're supposed to keep it real compartmentalized. And there's a reason for that. So for me, Jeff, and I want to hear more about this notion that there's, that we can't agree on universal human values, and we can't agree on what this thing should do, because I feel there is some of that.
No, I'm not saying we can't agree on it. I'm saying we cannot inject that into the machine. It is a general machine, and it can do whatever anyone asks it to do. And the guardrails prevent certain things, but only if you anticipate them. And hearing both of you, Paris and Jake, I'm reminded of hearing Alex Karp, and no, Leo, I haven't read his book yet, because I've been reading some better books, in a conference in Vienna some years ago. And he said, not unlike what Musk has said, what others have said, regulate us. Yes, regulate us. Because what he's doing in saying that is pushing off the responsibility of those ethical judgments onto government. Right? You guys come up with the rules, then we'll do whatever's left over. We'll do everything we can except the rules you set, rather than saying that we're going to be judged by what we do. And my point about guardrails is only that they are bound to fail. And so we've got to recognize that as a society. And when we don't, we put ourselves, I think, in a position of jeopardy as a result.
In our Discord, Darren Noki, who is, like me, a fan of AI, does point out that AI, like other technologies, will probably cause harm. But he says, I would assert the chance of successfully guessing in what way and choosing the correct guardrails is 0%. He said, seatbelts made sense, but it was after you started to see what the problem was that you were solving. And I think he's probably right.
You probably could have predicted the need for seatbelts.
You probably could have predicted seatbelts. I think I think it's kind of
maybe
a naive
not. We say
way to
that
look
now,
about
but
things.
maybe not.
Of course.
Well, and we
just
live in a country.
Yeah,
go ahead, Rose. Sorry.
Just because there are going to be things that we miss and things we can't possibly anticipate doesn't mean that doesn't mean that it's foolish to think that the creators of new technologies should be engaged in a process of trying to predict the potential harms of what they are creating and solving for that. Like, I think that is the least someone can do.
Yeah, especially considering just how much money is being made in that industry. Like you can
money ruins everything. Unfortunately,
you can afford to put aside a little bit of that. Yeah, like we don't need to make all the money.
Well, but the canonical example is the atomic bomb. And the people who built it knew, look, they kind of knew what they were about.
Yeah, but they weren't buying it to sell it to kids.
That's true. No, it wasn't a money-making proposition. And but in hindsight, they did realize, geez, maybe we shouldn't have done that. They did it because they felt like they had to.
And isn't it interesting how much of the rhetoric of AI right now has to do with it needing to be a grand national effort?
Yes, because China.
Yeah, China's going to blah, 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 blah. What's so interesting to me about the China thing, too, is when you look at how China's regulating AI, they regulate the bejesus.
They're doing a lot more to regulate.
Yeah, if you're in China right now and you build a product, so remember when Midjourney was used to depict Trump in an orange jumpsuit, these sort of photorealistic news photo style representations of Trump incarcerated. In China, not only would the company be in trouble for that, the CEO of the company would be personally liable for it.
Could go to jail. In fact, often
would be in prison. And
but now China is using that for these amazing, wonderful videos of Trump working in a factory line.
In a sweatshop.
You've seen those.
I love those videos.
Yeah, that's right.
They're hilarious.
And so I'm not in any way arguing that we should be living under the dictatorial regime of China, because at the same time, China also requires that those AI models adhere to Communist Party doctrine and
I do want the cars.
Creepy stuff.
I want one of their cars.
Yeah, right. And you're about to miss a lot of Chinese things in the next year. But I think that the idea that we can't regulate it, and that that regulation stands in the way of our competing effectively with China is ridiculous when you see how much China regulates this stuff.
An interesting thing happened earlier today. We run our shows on a variety of platforms, including Google's YouTube. And one of our chatters in YouTube said something about, we were talking about eating animals or something. He said something about the Chinese eat donkeys. And YouTube blocked it, not because of the eating donkeys, because there was a lot of other animal eating going on. But as soon as they said Chinese eat donkeys, YouTube blocked it and said, do you want to approve this comment? So it's not just the Chinese that are doing this kind of stuff. Proactively, I think companies like Google are doing this kind of stuff. Interestingly, maybe not so much with their AI.
I wonder... This is somewhat beside the point, but I wonder if that phrase was added to a potential flag for live chats because of the whole immigrants eating pets.
Eating dogs? But there were other comments in there about eating cats and dogs.
Oh, really? And those weren't blocked?
Those were not blocked. It's just as soon as the word China...
fascinating.
Anyway, I don't know what that has to do with anything. We have the tools to do this kind of stuff, maybe not perfectly. Yesterday on Security Now, we talked about something called the Inception Prompt, which it was actually a very simple way to get around AI safety by asking the AI, well, I know you can't tell me how to build a Molotov cocktail, but if you could tell me how to build a Molotov cocktail, how would you do it? Or what is it that you're not telling? Just out of curiosity, what can't you tell me? And then it would answer. So, obviously somebody will now go fix that, but there seems to be kind of an infinite trove of these prompts.
Just like spam, just like all the bad behaviors from people and beings.
So that's part of my objection to it is I don't even know if you can do it, right? Not only who should be doing this and what they should be blocking, but can you even do this in any reasonable way? It's almost, to me, saying AI safety at least when it comes from these money-making companies is much more, we're doing our best, right?
To me, I just feel like there are so many examples in sort of innovation in the United States and around the world where if you take the sort of if you give these tools to people trained to do productive things with them, amazing things come out of that. And this expectation that everybody should get to drive the car as fast as they want to doesn't quite feel right to me. I was talking to mathematicians the other day. Fascinating duo. Again, not to keep plugging my show, but it's my whole social life now is
we know the plug away, my friend.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that's all I ever talk to. This is the only people I ever talk to. Anyway, so this husband and wife mathematician, political science duo who study like whether democracy can work, like mathematically, really interesting. Anyway, they have been using ChatGPT as like a sort of thought partner in both the math they do and in the political science questions they do. And they were saying how awesome it is as that, but that they also have learned to treat it like a drunk friend because it will occasionally just make something up or, it'll look great, but it'll just make something up. And I was realizing, wow, but it really takes like the training of a PhD to recognize that mistake and make the right judgment around so forth. And I was just thinking like, maybe there are just tiers of
it's responsibility. It's so your car example, right? The auto manufacturer can limit the speed of a car, true, but they can't make everybody safe. You're responsible for your car. And I think that we've got to recognize that there is a stack of responsibility to all of these things. And, and so just saying that the maker of the original model, the example I always give, because it's a drinking game, is Gutenberg, that if you told Gutenberg that he has to be responsible for everything that came off the press, you couldn't. And in a sense, it's the same. So various parties were held responsible. First, it was the printer, and the printers were beheaded and behanded for what came off the press. Then it was the booksellers. Then finally, it was the author. And Foucault would argue, hey, that's something new on this show. Foucault would argue that, or argued that was the moment of the creation. It's like Baudot of the author, when they were held responsible. And so responsibility plays into all of this. Now, the thing about an AI model is, those who choose to ask it a noxious question to get a noxious output should be held responsible for that.
That's
it's
right.
the case
because
of,
right now we're in a regime where nobody's responsible.
Right.
That's what they're trying to convince us, that no one should be responsible.
The computer can do it, the machine can do it, and they can't. The other example I always give is the schmuck lawyer whose case I covered in federal court, who asked for case citations and used them without looking them up or without doing his job. The judge said the technology wasn't the problem. The schmuck lawyer was.
We're talking to Jacob Ward. He's the author of a book called The Loop: How AI is Creating a World Without Choices and How to Fight Back. He's also the host of the Rip Current podcast. Jacob, normally we would let you go at this half-hour mark, but I really want to keep talking. Do you have a minute more? Can you give us a little more time?
I don't have any friends anymore. I'm ready to hang out all day. Let's go.
Jacob, we're your friends now, buddy.
Let's do it. I'll do this as long as you have me. Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, because I do want to ask you about those mathematicians.
You could be here for 17 days.
I'm ready. I've got snacks. I've got water. I'm ready to rock.
Great.
Paris knows well.
Was Leo honest with you when he brought you onto the show about how long it generally goes?
I don't recall. I mean, I had known, I don't recall the first time I did TWiT, but I was in an office, so I maybe didn't realize the fact that it was going. Oh, no. I think that was Tech News Weekly. Actually, it wasn't Leo, but it was someone else who invited me on TWiT, and I was seated in the most awkward. I was on a bed with an Ethernet cable, going nothing behind me. I had muscle pains from sitting up for 3 hours straight for a TWiT show once. So
Lisa has
I figured it out after that.
Lisa has enjoined me to keep these shows shorter. I'm going to try.
I received. I could tell that happened not because I was watching Leo, but because I got like 7 DMs from listeners being like, "Paris, they want to make the shows shorter. Keep them long. Keep talking." Listeners, I'll never shut up. That's the Paris promise.
I don't remember when it was exactly, but like 2010, 2011, something like that. I went on Joe Rogan, like early Joe Rogan.
That's a long show.
Whoa! I had no idea. Right, and I was used to like, TV, like 3.5 minute kind of thing.
You got 7 minutes, 2 minutes.
All my
TV.
thoughts come out in 3.5 minutes, and I sit down. He gives me like he offers his guests these it's like a stick of butter blended into a cup of coffee.
Oh yeah.
Oh, a bulletproof coffee.
Yeah.
Hold on. Speaking of Joe Rogan.
Stick of butter and coffee. Oh
yeah, that was
whenever I come to Florida, my father asks me if I want Joe Rogan's Neuro Gum, which I think is just a gum that is promoted on it, but it's got caffeine in it, so I
mean, this is the thing,
continue.
and so I'm suddenly like wired out of my head and have to use the bathroom the whole time, basically, and I'm stuck on there for like 3 hours. I had no idea. that was going to be the thing. It is an endurance sport.
I want to get more on this. I didn't realize you'd been on Rogan. Wow, that's pretty cool.
I was dodging conspiracy theories all day. He'd ask me questions like, how does the brain work? And I'd be like,
you're like,
I'll just make something up. That's what we do here.
Dodging. And they've all got laptops in front of them, but I didn't know I should bring my laptop so I could look things up. Like I was like, oh, you're just not doing things off the top of your head. I have to do all this stuff off the top of my head. Oh my God. Yeah, it was a nightmare.
That's crazy.
You talked about one of your episodes where you interviewed the mathematicians, which is, by the way, fascinating. John Patty and Elizabeth Penn. And algorithms are one of the problems, right? I mean, this is something mathematicians know very well.
Yeah, these guys are so smart and they're so interesting to talk to because they look at it differently than we all are, and I mean no disrespect to anyone on this panel, right? We are all qualitative people, I would argue.
Yeah, they think rigorously,
people, right?
mathematically.
We're thinking about we're thinking about it the way some people, most people do. These folks truly run the math. So they had this early book that is a total slog, I'll tell you, because it's not for us, it's for academics. It's called Social Choice and Legitimacy, that came out in 2014. And what they basically showed in that book is that the best you can hope for out of democracy is not consensus. It's not majority will. Those of us who were raised on Aaron Sorkin's screenplays for The West Wing are going to be sorely disappointed. The math shows that basically all you can hope for is a system in which you lose most of the time, but you continue to believe that the system is legitimate. As long as you believe that the system is, fair, then you're going to go along. That's how democracy basically is at its most base math level, is what they've shown. Okay, so once they have established that, now they've been working, and this, by the way, is a husband and wife team, which is so interesting to me. Any husbands and wives that can work together as closely as these two do is amazing to me. Anyway, they now are talking about algorithmic fairness because they're trying to get ready for the world that we all see coming, in which an algorithm is going to tell you, and this is what my book is all about, like who gets a loan, who gets a job, who gets bail, right? All those systems. And what they are trying to show is that when you treat the system as if its number one purpose is to be as neutral and as accurate as possible, you are in fact creating an opportunity to kind of blind yourself to what's really going on and can in the end have the opposite effect that you intend. So here's an example. They were talking about a case in Chicago in which traffic cameras were set up all over the city that literally were just there to determine whether you were speeding or not. They just capture the speed of the vehicle and its license plate. They don't capture pictures of the person inside. They're not making a judgment based on race. And yet the results were that brown and black people in Chicago were much more likely to get a traffic ticket out of it. Why would that be? And so at first you could imagine like somebody who doesn't want to look any more deeply than what the system tells you, because the system's neutral and the system's accurate, they could just come out of it and be like, well, obviously brown and black people just drive worse than white people do, and that must be why.
It makes perfect sense.
Perfect sense. Look, the math shows you, and these cameras are randomly distributed through the city. They're not in any particular neighborhood. Like everything on the face of it shows accuracy and neutrality. But it turns out that when you scratched a little bit and you got a little deeper into the system, what was really happening was when you have an even distribution of the same kind of cameras across a city where the speed limit is the same no matter what the streets are like, it turns out that the affluent neighborhoods have these tight little cute streets, whereas the working class and income challenged neighborhoods have enormous 4-lane streets, but the same 30-mile-an-hour speed limit or whatever the speed limit is. So people in those places who are driving to work, they don't get to walk to work, they don't get to bike to work, they have to drive everywhere they go. By the nature of the design of that space, drive faster because it just looks like you should be able to drive faster. And they're getting hit with traffic tickets at a far greater rate. It took a lot of work to get in there and figure that kind of thing out, right?
It may even be more complicated than that because these cameras in most police departments in the U.S. use Clearview AI.
Well, that's right. It could be that there are all kinds of things. But
and we now know that Clearview AI had always intended to go after immigrants, brown people,
I interviewed
liberals.
That CEO a couple of times, and he was fascinating in that same
quite a character.
And wanted to say again and again, look how neutral this is. This is just neutral. It's just a tool, just like anything else.
That's the real threat, is the impression of neutrality.
That's the thing.
Nothing is neutral.
Right. And we're so good as humans. I mean, literally the thesis of my book, because it's based on all of this research into, all this research that behavioral sciences have done, is that the human brain is built to take shortcuts. It doesn't want to think through a decision. It wants to make the quickest possible decision. That's how we stayed alive for, hundreds of thousands of years on the open plains, was not by going, do I like this? Is this apple a good apple? Is this the right kind of apple? Like, no, you see an apple, you grab it, you eat it. Is this guy coming up toward me a stranger, a friend? What's his deal? No, it doesn't matter. He's a stranger. I'm running away from him, right? These instinctive decisions are what we are about. And so when we have a system like this that offers the opportunity to just offload our decision making about who gets a job, who gets a loan, who gets bail, to this automated system, our brain can't help but do that. We are built to believe AI is good at what it does. And that, I think, is the big threat. That's what we're talking about, and that's what these two, John Patty and Elizabeth Penn, are looking into right now.
There is a way to fight this. Our Discord has put up this story from 2017 in the Arizona Republic newspaper. Dave Vodesmar, who lived in Phoenix, hated speed cameras. So he put on a monkey mask every time he passed through the photo enforcement gauntlet on I-17, Arizona 51, and Interstate 10. He was sent 37 unpaid photo enforcement tickets, but he said, not one of them is there a picture where you can identify the driver. That's all monkeys.
That's commitment.
He got out of the tickets. Although I'm thinking maybe you should get a ticket for driving in a monkey mask, but that's another. I don't know if there's a law against that. So
it doesn't look like it has appropriate eye holes to be able to see where you're going.
Yes, I think your peripheral vision is obstructed.
I once got zapped in Jersey City when we still had cameras. We got rid of them in New Jersey. And the images show clearly that they were wrong in the judgment. I was not in front of, there was a car in front of me that was bad. I was not. So I call a lawyer and he said, yeah, you can pay me, but it goes after the car. It doesn't go after you because it doesn't know who's driving the car, so it can't. So you're not getting any points. You're not getting anything else. Just pay the $35.
That's a good lawyer, by the way.
And you're like, but the principal.
The AI lawyer would say, write me the check right now. So, Jacob, you promise in the loop to prescribe a fix for this. How do we defend ourselves against this? This is what's happening.
I wrote a check that I could not cash with that title. I have to tell you, right? It's a big check, right?
Blame your editor. Blame AI.
I know, exactly. So
marketing.
The big thing I will say that we learned, or that I learned in putting this book together, right, is that there are times in human, that basically all the great breakthroughs of human history, when it comes to rising above our ancient horrible instincts where we killed strangers because they looked different than us, right? Like that kind of life that we were living in the past. The way we got to now was not by giving up our decision-making systems to outside forces. It was the times when we got together and really dug in and did the hard work of trying to come together over something. So I talked to one of the negotiators at the Good Friday Accords, which put an end to the troubles in Northern Ireland and, between Protestant and Catholic forces there. And he told me that it took them multiple years just to figure out where everyone was going to sit at the table, literally where they were going to sit at the table. That's how long it took to just get the seating arrangements right.
People of Jeff Jarvis and my age remember this going on with the Vietnam the treaty agreements. Remember?
That's right.
The shape of the table took months.
And this is the important lesson here, is that we are being fooled into thinking that if it can't happen in this financial quarter or under this presidential administration, then it can't be done. And that is just not how the world actually works. So that's one broad lesson. Another lesson, places that I'm seeing victory, if you want to call it this, is, I know that lawyers get a bad reputation and liability law is, there's all this rhetoric about ambulance chasers and the rest of it. But I have to say that when you actually look at the track record of some of these big law firms in the class action suits that they're bringing against companies for the things that they're doing with tech, there's a really interesting trend of actually winning in a way that I think could be positive for everybody. So one example of this is what are called social casino games. These are games that simulate a casino game like slots or blackjack, but in such a way that you have to pay to play on your phone, but you cannot win real money back. It's the definition of a loser's game. And for years, people were laughed out of court who tried to sue over these games. Because what happens is that typically these elderly, very lonely women, because that's the target market, would lose their life savings to these games. They become super addicted to them and couldn't help it but give away all of their money to these games. These days, those companies are beginning to settle for hundreds of millions of dollars in court, as courts are hearing more and more of these stories from these sad old ladies who clearly were victimized. And the pattern being shown is that, I talked to a guy once who had been a marketer at Facebook, which is one of the main ways that these companies find these elderly ladies. And I said, how do you find your people? He did the marketing for this product. And he said, oh, well, we would just correlate low credit scores and geography and GPA.
Man.
Like they were
boy.
literally finding people that they could influence in this way, and so those court cases are beginning to turn against those companies in a way that I think is really interesting. And then the last
same
one,
problem with state lotteries, but that's another story.
well, this is Jeff, man, you're speaking my language, brother. That is exactly right. For me, the state lotteries and the new state endorsement of phone-based sports gambling, more than 30 states now have made that legal. The way that those states are working against the financial and wealth, the welfare of their citizens, crazy. Anyway, the last one I'll say that for me was an inspiring thing was until 2013, there was a small but consistent number of deaths in the United States that were of a particularly horrific nature, which were parents typically accidentally, basically not seeing their kids in the driveway. And a terrible thing happening, and the kids dying, right? It was about 60 to 100 deaths a year. Now, when you look at the standard number of deaths when it comes to something like motor vehicle accidents or gun deaths or alcohol deaths in this country, it's tens of thousands apiece. So 60 to 100 deaths doesn't make any sense in the math. And I would point out that an AI system shown that would not prioritize that, right? The sheer math of it wouldn't make that a national priority. But when you get a bunch of senators together and you say parents are accidentally backing over their own children, and there's a simple technological fix, and that's putting backup cameras in these cars, you had a bipartisan group of senators come together and say, we're going to fix this problem. And they did in a very partisan time, because we can recognize as humans that is totally unacceptable, and that there's an easy fix for that. And so today, you and I, we pay an extra $1,000 for the car that we buy so that it has a mandatory backup camera in it. That's why they're there. And the numbers of those deaths have almost nothing.
I will never drive a car without a backup camera, and I don't even have kids. I hit things all the time.
And if you buy a new car today, you will always have a backup camera in it. Because
what else?
We as a society have decided this, and I think that's the big lesson here.
Same thing happened with leaving kids in the car. Almost all the cars.
Yes.
I started noticing that a couple of years ago. My car would say there's something in the back seat
of the car. That's right. That's right. That's right. And so I just think the lesson is, people like to say, oh, there's nothing to be done, or, we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube or any of that stuff. And I just think, we are great at putting the toothpaste back in the tube. We put the toothpaste in the tube to begin with. We're really good at solving these kinds of problems. It just takes longer than we think, and we won't do it for money. We'll only
just say it's going to hurt kids and you're safe.
Well, that's right. I mean, if you, common human decency, and if we just let the money making drive us, that's not going to solve it.
That's a very nice, hopeful way to end the show. The book, and I want to, not the show, but the interview. I really want to get you back, Jacob. You're fantastic. I wish you well with your podcast.
Leo. I'd love
Good.
It. I appreciate it.
TheRipCurrent.com. It covers the big hidden forces just beneath the surface that are threatening to pull us all out to sea. It's also what the book is about. And I could not recommend this more highly. Somehow it snuck under my radar when it came out in 2021. People should be reading it. Because you were right. you kind of saw it ahead of time.
I had one reviewer say, "Oh, this book." I got pretty good reviews, but one person said, it's what they say. It's it's full of conjecture. It's paranoid and speculative. And I wish I'd been more paranoid and more speculative.
I wish.
I'm always saying that.
The Loop: How Technology is Creating a World Without Choices and How to Fight Back. And it's Roger McNamee said the best book I've ever read about AI, which is pretty high praise.
I'm very kind.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Leo. And Jeff Peros, great to be with you. Thanks.
So nice to meet you.
Lovely
Thank you,
to be
Jacob.
with you.
Jacob Ward, everybody. You saw him on CNN, Al Jazeera, NBC, and now right here, and Joe Rogan, and now right here.
See ya.
Hey, it's Leo Laporte. I hope you've enjoyed this little clip from our programming at TWiT.tv. For more, visit our website, TWiT.tv, or subscribe in your favorite podcast client. There's also a link somewhere down there.